Good afternoon. I'm Sunrise Management Consulting's Marketing Director, Heather Schechter, and we are so pleased that you could join us today. Our company manages apartments throughout the capital region and has a passion for building great communities for our residents. During this pandemic, we wanted to stay connected and bring you speakers with tips and ideas you could use. The COVID-19 pandemic has upended everyone's routines, including eating habits. Gaining 15 pounds during this pandemic, called the Quarantine 15, has been widely written about. Whether you were used to eating out on weekends at your favorite restaurant, or you used to eat most of your meals on the run, many of us have had to adjust where we get our meals, what ingredients we use, and even we eat. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Kristen A. Gil, President and Nutrition Director of Fitness Artist, for tips on getting your eating habits back on track. If you have any questions, please submit them using the Q&A feature during this webinar, and we will save time to answer questions at the end. Thank you again for joining us, and I'm happy to now introduce Kristen Gil. Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
All right. How can you explain this phenomenon known as the Quarantine 15?
So a lot of people's lifestyles have changed since the quarantine pandemic has started. People have stopped working outside of the home. They're working in the home. They're closer to their kitchen. They're snacking more. They may be stress and comfort eating. Gyms have closed down. So a lot of people's healthy habits, routines have changed, and people have been maybe eating more often, eating a little bit more than usual, and not being as active. So we're noticing that people are gaining weight during quarantine.
When did this all start? Was it as soon as COVID, started locking things down, or how did this all come about?
Yeah, I feel like when the gyms, exercise places started to close down, and then, we were kind of told to stay in our homes. People were cooking, they were baking more. People were working at home. So, you're closer to your kitchen. You might be snacking more often because you have more opportunities to eat. So I feel like it started probably around mid-March, where people's routines and habits started to change.
Interesting. And you mentioned a lot of people started working from home and find themselves right by their kitchen. How can they avoid constant trips into the kitchen?
So one thing I always recommend for my clients is to establish an eating place within your home. So not eating on the couch in front of the TV, not eating in your bedroom, but maybe your kitchen table is where you eat your meals and snacks. So you prepare your meal, you prepare your snack, you eat it at the appropriate time, and then you clean up and you walk out of the kitchen, and that mealtime is over. It kind of takes your mind off of that mindless eating that a lot of people do when they take food out of the kitchen or away from that designated place where they eat their meals.
That's a great idea, setting a place. When you talk about times, are there best times of day for people to eat?
So there really aren't that specific to the person. I love to eat and I love food. So I am big on eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I really pay attention to my hunger cues. So if I'm hungry in between a meal, I'm going to have a snack. I like to refer to it as intuitive eating. So really paying attention, some days we're hungrier than others. And I just take that as my body needing a little bit more. Maybe my workout was more challenging that day. Maybe it's really hot out and my body is deprived of a nutrient that it needs. So if I'm hungry, I will have a snack, but I just make sure that my snacks are healthy options, like a cut up apple with peanut butter or cut up raw vegetables with a little bit of hummus.
Now, in this working from home, not only has where people have eaten changed, but sometimes what people are wearing has changed. And they find themselves wearing elastic waistbands and loose fitting clothes. How has that affected people's eating?
So I think with that, when you're not putting on dress clothes or your pair of jeans, you might feel that you haven't gained weight or that you're a little, you're in comfort clothing. So you're not really realizing if things have shifted maybe where they shouldn't have. So what I would recommend is getting dressed in your regular clothes at least once a week, whether you're going out to the grocery store or going to drop something off at a loved one's, that you're putting on your clothes just to make sure things still fit.
Wear pants on Zoom.
Yes.
Um, and some of us, I actually lived in Manhattan for a while. I never ate at home. So I ate all my meals on the go, lunch, dinner. For people who have had to adjust to eating at home, how do they start?
I would say start small. I find that when people put too much pressure on themselves, that's when you set yourself up for failure. So start with simple things. If you're used to eating breakfast going through a drive-through at, Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks, maybe start with just focusing on, something simple. Like, can you make quick oats in the microwave for oatmeal, and you can add a little cinnamon and milk of your choice. If you like egg sandwiches, can you make them at home? Just quickly make an egg, maybe toast a whole grain English muffin and put a little bit of cheese on it. So just not trying not to make it too complicated. I find when people think they need to be this gourmet chef that it becomes very complicated, but keeping it simple. I always tell people to think of three things when they're eating. What's your protein, what's your fat source, and what's your carbohydrate source? Because those are our three macronutrients. So if we're talking about breakfast, our carbohydrate could be a whole grain English muffin. Our fat source could be the cheese and the egg yolk, and the protein could be the other part of the egg. So there you go. You have your three macronutrients and a healthy breakfast at home.
Now, I remember being back in the 80s when it was all those fat free diets. That is no longer the thinking in terms of healthy eating?
No, so a lot of the research has pointed to, our bodies need fat. Fat is one of our macronutrients. We need fat for energy. We need fat to help our bodies um, work the way they're supposed to, to comfort our organs and our muscles and our tissues for brain development. It's essential. So what we've really focused on more now is what kind of fats we're eating. And the push many years ago to eliminate trans fats from the diet, because that's a fat that's really made, in a lab. It's not something real that our body recognizes. And you'll notice that that's not really in anything anymore. You want to focus on getting the majority of your fats from unsaturated fats. So those are plant-based fats usually. So avocados, olive oils, nut butters like peanut butter and almond butter, unsalted nuts. Those are the ones that you want to get the bulk of your fat in. And you do need about 7% of saturated fats per day. So those are your animal fats. So that would be things like cheese, egg, dairy products, meats, chicken and turkey skin. So anything that's made from an animal would be your saturated fat, and anything that's plant-based typically is an unsaturated fat.
How do vegans get that kind of fat that they need?
So typically vegans will eat things like olives, olive oil, avocados, nuts, because those are all things that are not sourced from an animal. And then also sometimes supplementation we recommend in the vegan diet, just because certain things like B vitamins and vitamin D and calcium, we just want to make sure that they're getting enough.
Interesting. Now, how has the pandemic impacted food supply and people's access to healthy foods?
So This is an interesting question because I've heard a lot of people go to the store and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't get certain things that I normally get." And I really paid attention to this. I'm the one in my house that does the majority of the grocery shopping, and I really honed in on, okay, let me see what is it that we're missing on the shelves. Am I able to get everything that I need for our grocery shop? When I grocery shop, I look for minimal ingredients. I try to stay around the perimeter of the grocery store because I like to buy whole foods. But if I'm going down the aisle, I want, 5 ingredients or less. I want to know what I'm putting in my body. So I have to say, besides toilet paper and paper towels, I was really able to buy everything that my family needed every week. The things that I noticed that we grocery stores were low on were things like canned items, because I think people were getting nervous. They didn't want to go out to the store. They were nervous about our food supply. So I noticed that people bought a lot of rice, a lot of pasta, a lot of items that had a longer shelf life. So they didn't have to worry about, where their next meal was going to come from. One thing I did do for our family during the pandemic, during the height of it, because it was a really stressful time, was I stocked up on frozen fruits and vegetables, because I figured if we couldn't get to the store one week or something crazy happened, I did buy that. So kind of stocked up our freezer. And then, beans, rice, things that were hearty that you could get multiple meals out of. But overall, natural organic items I felt like were still in stock.
Just a side note, I know you have a son
Yes.
and you're probably trying to do the same kind of eating for all of you guys. And you talk about unprocessed foods. What about breakfast cereal? What's your take on that?
So I think there are healthier options for breakfast cereal. Again, my son goes in and out of phases. He's a toddler, so he did go through a phase where he loved cereal. And I just try to pick healthier options. So there's a lot of natural, organic cereals that are made, and then simpler, less sugar. Like even something like a Cheerio is better than a cinnamon toast crunch. So it's just looking at your ingredients and making sure that it's a healthier option than most. But I try to steer towards more natural organic cereals with less than 8 grams of sugar per serving.
Okay, that's good to have that guideline. There have been recommendations to do extra cleaning of store bought food, including fruits and vegetables. Packaged foods seem easier to wipe down with disinfectant. Should people refrain from eating unpackaged foods at this time, or how do they deal with this?
So I think the recent studies that have come out have said, you really don't need to be wiping down your foods that come into your house, because everyone who's, the grocery store workers are required to be wearing their gloves and their masks. And so I think that we went a little overboard with Cloroxing everything that came into the house. Before the pandemic, I was washing my fruits and vegetables. So I hope everybody's doing that, and maybe just paying a little bit closer attention. But, coronavirus or not, you should be washing your fruits and vegetables before you eat them, just from, them traveling. You don't know where they're coming from, who had touched them. So it's really important to do that, whether we are in a pandemic because of a virus or not. But I wouldn't go over the top with Clorox wiping all the foods you're bringing into the house.
How do you effectively wash fruits and vegetables?
It depends, really you want how much you want to wash them or not. Some people are okay with really rinsing them well underwater. Some people use a fruit and vegetable wash. Some people will soak them in their sink with a fruit and vegetable wash. There's other people who use essential oils. So I really think that's a personal preference.
Makes sense. So, eating healthy often seems more expensive and like more work. How can people start integrating in healthy foods without blowing their budget?
So what I always recommend is to pay attention to what's in season and what's on sale. So you'll notice that every week grocery stores will usually feature something. Like this week, we're selling, peaches for 89 cents a pound, or this week we're selling cantaloupes for two for $1. So healthy eating doesn't necessarily have to be more expensive. It just might require a little bit more thought process. So whether you're buying fresh spinach, fresh frozen spinach, or canned unsalted spinach, the nutrient quality is all the same. It comes down to what works best for your family and what's in your budget.
What is in season around here now in terms of fruits and vegetables?
So it depends. In upstate New York right now, we're starting to go into melon season, peaches, nectarines, plums, and we're getting a lot of local lettuces, green beans, carrots, sugar snap peas, spinach, greens. So there's a lot of great fruits and vegetables that are in season right now, and it might even be more cost effective for you to utilize your local farmers or farmer markets instead of getting those things from the grocery store, which usually have traveled further away and which the cost is going to be higher.
Speaking of that, I've heard a lot of people taking up, gardening at this time, and some people trying to grow their own fruits and vegetables in case the food supply gets completely cut off. Have you
Yeah.
heard of that going on too?
Yes, I have actually. We're doing it ourselves. I've always done little pots of fruit and vegetables. We did raised beds this year. And I have to tell you that raised beds are such a game changer. I've never had plants this big and also harvest so soon. I've already had, basil and lettuce and eggplants and cucumbers, all sorts of green beans, good stuff coming out already. So I think, I'm one who always likes to look at the cup as half full instead of half empty. So there are a lot of positives that have come from this pandemic. And one of them is people are teaching their children and they're also learning to grow their own food, which is a fantastic thing.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Um, how does someone figure out what quantity of food they need to be healthy?
So everyone is different. Everyone's body requires different amounts of food. And I think that it's important this is where the intuitive eating comes in. Okay. So eating when we're hungry, stopping when we're full, not stopping when we're stuffed and we feel like we're sick, or not waiting to eat until the point where we're so hungry we think we're going to pass out and then we end up overeating. So it's really just paying attention. It's minimizing distractions. It's not being on your cell phone, not sitting in front of a tablet, a computer, or a TV, but it's preparing things, like, for example, what I eat in a meal is going to be less than what my husband eats in a meal because he's a foot taller than me and weighs almost 100 pounds more than me. So,
Wow.
you have to just pay attention to your body size and pay attention to how you feel before, during, and after eating. Also, at the rate of which people eat, I find that some people eat very fast and then they end up overeating. So making sure that you're pausing, that you're maybe having conversation with your family, that you always have, a cup of water by you, you're taking time to really chew your food. Your digestion will be more optimal if you slow down, chew your food, and drink your water during your meal.
How important is weight consistency? I mean, people have gained the quarantine 15. Is that a big problem?
So research says that it's actually better if you're a few pounds overweight to stay that way rather than to yo-yo diet. So it's not healthy for your body to lose 20 pounds, gain 20 pounds, lose 25, gain 20 back. It's very stressful on every organ in your body, your heart muscle, your gallbladder. It's just stressing your body out. So if you're a little bit overweight and you're thinking of weight loss, you want to do it in a safe way where you're losing 1 to 2 pounds per week. That's sustainable, healthy weight loss. There is no quick fix. It takes hard work and dedication of proper nutrition and exercise. And you have to really, it's mental. So you have to be able to check in with yourself and say, am I ready to make this change? And it's a lifestyle change. It's not a diet. So if you're ready to do something and stick to it for the rest of your life, and you think you can lose those 10, 15 pounds and be successful with keeping them off, then I would say, go ahead, let's get started. But don't be looking for a quick fix. And if you have gained some weight and it's not normal for you and you're able to slowly get back to your routine, I encourage you to do that. You don't want to take this as, well, I've gained the weight, so throw in the towel, forget about it. Let's just keep going, because that's not healthy either.
Right. It's fascinating. And you mentioned, people's activity levels too. So fitness artists, can you tell us a little bit about fitness artists for people
Yeah.
who know?
So my husband and I own a small fitness center in Clifton Park, and we are doing online live classes and also recording them. And this week we opened up 3 different class times. So we have a 6 a.m. class, a 9 a.m. class, and a 6 p.m. class. We're limiting our class sizes so that they're small. But we're inviting our clients to come to one of those sessions per day, Monday through Friday. And just a way, I know personally during quarantine, I was all about the one thing I could control was us eating healthy and moving, doing something active every day. But working out as home is really different than working out in group fitness and kind of feeling, you get a lot of good feelings from working out around other people. And so it's felt really good for me personally to get back to the gym, and we're doing it all outside. So it's usually weather pending, but even when it's warm outside, we just take it a little bit slower. But just to keep everybody safe, we have more than 10 feet of distance between people. So I know the rule right now is 6 feet. We're very spread apart. Everyone has their own disinfectant spray bottle, their own Purell bottle. We told clients they have to bring their own water bottles and towels because we're not going to supply them right now. So we're just doing our best to make sure people can get back to their fitness routine and also stay healthy at the same time.
Now, when people were thrown for their fitness routine, did they then come say, I need help with my diet? Is that
Yeah,
a natural progression? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of natural that when you stop exercising, it's like, oh, whatever, I'm going to eat the ice cream, or, I'm going to have the French fries, doesn't matter. Exercise and nutrition go hand in hand. And I know for me personally, when I exercise, it makes me really think even more about what I'm eating that day, because I took that 45 minutes to an hour to really push myself and work hard. So if I was to go and eat something unhealthy, that doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about kids and eating, but I also noticed, when kids' schools quarantined or shut down, they had no more physical education class, and it was hard to get kids moving. And sometimes kids don't feel like eating if they don't feel hungry, and they don't feel hungry when they don't exercise, and it kind of becomes a cycle.
Right.
Um, it seems like in the summertime is a little easier, but do you have any tips on getting kids to eat if they don't feel like it?
So I would say that, kids are always watching you, even if you think they aren't. So, you know, we are an active family, so our son is active. So we constantly take him out on walks. We'll fill up a baby pool and have him swimming. We have him help us with cleaning. We have him help us water vegetables and plants outside. We have him help walk the dog. If he sees us doing a workout, he often will jump in and do it with us. So I think it's really important to have your kids watch you, because they are going to mimic what you do. And also developing a little bit of a routine, just like you have for yourself. So, there's a certain time that we sit down. If you're all together as a family and you're going to eat breakfast, there's a certain time for lunch, there's a certain time for dinner. And the more you kind of get them into that routine, the better they'll do. And remember too with kids that, typically they eat the way all adults should eat. They eat when they're hungry and they stop when they're full. So there are going to be days where they eat more, and there's going to be days when they eat less. And they're not going to starve to death. They're going to tell you when they're hungry. And we need to pay attention more to what they're doing, because they are truly what I call an intuitive eater. So it's really important to kind of just, your job as the parent or the caregiver is to provide them with healthy options. And their job is to tell you how much they're going to eat of that.
Now, if you're feeding your kids, certain foods that you wouldn't necessarily normally be snacking on yourself, how do you kind of balance that, or different schedules from what you're used to?
Yeah. So, for example, like summertime kids love popsicles, right? So, you can make your own popsicles. You can put fresh fruit in the blender with a little bit of water, and you can freeze them. And so, if your kid wants popsicles at 9 a.m., you can give them one of those, which is frozen fruit. Also, Chloe's Pops makes great all natural popsicles in the grocery store, and it's just frozen fruit and lemon juice. So maybe you don't have, an ice cream chocolate pop at 9 a.m., but maybe you have a frozen fruit pop. So it's just all about balance. I find too that a lot of parents get upset with something that their kids want to eat. And I'm like, well, who brought it into the house? If they're 3 years old, they didn't go to the grocery store and buy that. So just be mindful. If you don't want them eating for it or asking for it, then it's probably not a good idea to buy it in the first place. Unless it's a treat, like a birthday or a celebration. Obviously, everyone's going to eat something out of their norm. But if it's something you don't want your child asking for on a regular basis, then it's probably best just not to buy it.
That's great advice. So if you are trying to recover from the quarantine 15 and getting back to healthy eating, how do you make new habits sustainable?
So the first thing you have to think about is when you're writing down your goals, and I always suggest to write things down, put it on paper. Does it look like a good idea? Is it attainable? If you sit down and you say, I want to lose 100 pounds in a month, that's not an attainable goal. Okay. That may be a dream, but it's way too far of a reach. So you want to start with small, simple, clear, concise goals that can happen. So maybe you're going to start with, okay, I haven't worked out in 4 months. And I'm going to make it a goal that 3 times a week, I'm going to do something active for 20 minutes. And so today is July. So by this date in August, in four weeks, I am going to have been active for 1.5 hours 3 times a week. So just making it, I don't know if you've ever heard of SMART goals, SMART. It really kind of makes it very concise, and writing it down and making sure that you have a timeline as well, because that holds you accountable. And also maybe sharing it with somebody else, like doing it with a friend or a family member or your significant other, so that they can hold you accountable.
That's great advice. One last thing occurred to me. So I know this is the quarantine 15. This is a big weight change, but I was just thinking about people's seasonal variations in weight. And you said, what is the number that makes it an unhealthy shift? If you're gaining too much, losing too much, is there a certain number that you shouldn't gain and lose?
Yeah, so I don't think there's a certain number. I think in our society, we're very weight focused, and it's not necessarily always the best way to be, because, your ideal body weight or your body mass index doesn't work for everybody. So I think that, you need to take into account where you started and where, you've come from and where you want to be. And everyone's probably going to fluctuate a few pounds. I would say maybe if you're fluctuating more than 10, 15 pounds, then that's something to, just keep in the back of your mind. But if your clothing fit if you're healthy, your cholesterol levels are good, your blood pressure level is good, your blood sugar is good, you're staying active, 5 to 6 days a week, and you're eating healthy, I would say not to focus so much on the weight number.
Thank you. These were great tips. We really appreciate your time.
Good.
Yeah. For anyone joining us today who may be interested in hearing some of our past webinars, recordings are available on our website blog, which you can find at sunrisemc.com. Topics include pet behavior in a pandemic, making a career pivot, supporting your child's virtual learning, staying fit and strong at home, transforming stress into energy, and spring cleaning in a pandemic. After this webinar ends, you'll see a link to a survey. Would you please take a couple of minutes to give us feedback? Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much, Kristen.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Thank you.